Fake cop on Halloween. This happened almost a decade ago when I was 13 years old. I remember my friend and I were excited about our first time trick-or-treating without our parents. We lived in a small town where nothing ever happens and we thought it would be the same that night. It started like any other Halloween night. We collected candy, ran into many of our classmates, and had a lot of fun. At 8 p.m. we realized we had to head home, but on the way back we dropped by our teacher's house. She wasn't home and the street didn't have many streetlights. To add to this, most of the houses had their lights turned off and their Halloween decorations were taken down. My friend and I were slightly spooked and disappointed by the lack of candy. We wanted to get out of the street as soon as possible. That's when a man emerged from under one of the few streetlights. It was a police officer. Neither of us seemed to notice him before this, possibly due to the darkness. He startled us but seemed very friendly. The cop introduced himself and pointed to an inconspicuous bungalow. He said an older man living in this house was inviting trick-or-treaters inside. Someone called the police, but when he arrived no one was answering the door. He kept telling us his police car and partner were just around the block. We looked around but couldn't see them. I was a pretty paranoid kid. Growing up, my mom loved watching crime shows and she'd always tell me tidbits of lessons. One of these was a story about fake cops. Although I don't remember the details, I remembered people can pretend to be police officers to gain trust. Throughout this whole exchange, I was terrified. His lack of badge, police car, and partner did not feel right. I was also conflicted because he was smiling and seemed like he just wanted to help. That was until we heard his strange request. He said he needed to speak to this potential predator and needed our help. Since we were young girls, the man would answer if we knocked. The officer claimed he would hide behind the bushes next to the front door. He would wait for him to invite us in, jump out, and catch him red-handed. At that moment, I knew my friend felt the same way I did. We both fell silent, but one of us managed to ask if we could discuss. The cop said yes but told us we had limited time. The street was silent and he could hear everything. I remember the feeling of wanting to say something but fearing he would hear us and escalate the situation. We just stared at each other for what felt like forever. The cop was getting increasingly impatient and told us we had to decide quickly. Around that moment, a family came down the street and noticed the officer. They were coming over to see what was happening. That's when the cop said he'd be right back and to not go anywhere. My friend and I scrambled to collect our thoughts and decided to run away. We sprinted out of the street and didn't look back. On our way home, we discussed theories that ranged from him being a fake cop, him playing a prank on us, or him being a real cop, but we misunderstood the situation. When we told our parents, we downplayed it a lot and doubted our experience. In the end, we didn't call the police, but our dads drove to the house and area around the house. No cop cars or police officers were in sight. Over the years, I can say I regret not calling the police. At the time, my friend and I were convinced we misunderstood what happened. We even told our class the next day and most, including our teacher, thought it was not alarming. Looking back, I find it extremely strange a police officer would put two children in such a potentially dangerous situation, moreover with our parents not present. I wonder what his motives were, but it will, unfortunately, remain unsolved. Creepy fake cop on dark, desolate Interstate 15. To this day this remains the scariest thing I ever have experienced, and I really hope it serves as a cautionary tale to young ladies who make solo road trips. Day or night, one is no safer than the other. Please remember that. Moving on, a little backstory. From 1994 to 1999 I made close to weekly trips from my home in Vegas to Orange County, an arrangement made to facilitate visitation of my daughter with her father, with whom I have a violent past as a DV Vic. I did the drive to avoid him being in my space. BC, he had stalked me before, so in October 1996 I am making the trek on a Friday night. BC, I had to work until 6 Mon to Friday, so I usually didn't get on the road until 8 or 9. I used to love the dark mystery of the 15 South at that time of night, and traffic was usually nil, so as I'm approaching Baker, California, I exit freeway to stop at my and my daughter's fave gas station / food court with super clean bathrooms, things you learn after making a drive hundreds of times. This night was foggy and super dark, but the gas station was well lit. Deciding to top off gas after using bathroom and getting snacks, I had pulled to a pump close to door of store. That night we were the only customers inside the food court/gas station. But once we got outside, there was another car pumping gas at pump furthest from mine. I was busy putting my baby girl into her car seat and getting blankie and snack just right before the next 3 HRS on the road. My head was down, so the men at the other pump were not in my field of vision. But I could literally feel eyes burning into my back. Never before or since has the hair on my arms and back of my neck, while my pulse raced for no evident reason, as dread radiated and my ears were even buzzing in alarm. My head snaps up and I involuntarily spin around in a primal assessment of threat. That's when I saw a face on a creepy man in an expression of pure unprovoked palpable hatred towards me, a total stranger. Brows knitted, eyes squinting and scarily staring at me. A look that said he was desecrating and savagely violating me in his mind. I lost my breath, I was so spooked. I finished pumping, quickly jumped in the car, dramatically locking all 4 doors, and got TF out of there like it was on fire. It took me a few minutes to calm myself down and stop shaking. After a while you put it behind me, telling myself he must have thought I was someone else. Nope. Around 30 miles down the 15, approaching Barstow, a weird light started shining into my car from the car to the right lane of me. So bright I could see nothing of who was driving or what. I ignored it, speeding up to lose this asshole. Then it's gone. I assumed it had exited freeway a way back and I hadn't noticed. Good riddance. Then a car pulls behind me and a red light flashes along with a weird sounding horn honk. I assume I'm being pulled over for speeding. I pull to the shoulder and stop to wait for officer to approach my window. I know not to stare at cops. My eyes are straight forward. My daughter is sleeping. My windows are still up. He'll roll it down when he gets to my car. So I'm waiting. And waiting. Mind you, this is before everyone had a cell phone and travelers relied on call boxes every half me to use for emergencies. Then I look over to my side mirror. It was so dark. All I saw was a guy standing there, his head anxiously swiveling like he's not wanting any cars around to see him. Then I notice a badge, but not on his chest. But on his pants, jeans, I could see as my eyes adjusted. Like it was clipped onto his waistband. Then the stare. And fear shakes my gut for the second time in less than an hour. My baby wakes up, I see her sweet beautiful face in my rearview mirror. And this creepy guy inside mirror, survival instinct roared into action. Details about this encounter were alarming me and I was again choked up and shaking like crazy. My heart was racing. All of a sudden, in a split second, I felt something whisper, then loudly demand I GTF away ASAP. As if my body was following silent divine commands, I turned the key, shifted into first and slammed on the gas, spraying gravel on my wake. I was driving full tilt boogie like 90 miles per hour. I had zero alcohol or drugs in or on me anywhere, and that gave me confidence, thinking, go ahead, follow me to next police station. All of a sudden that car passed me and I saw it was gas station guy. As well as fake cop guy. I also saw a red siren light like they used to sell at Spencer's Gifts. I actually laughed at how ridiculous his show was up close and not being blinded by a bright light. Then I got pissed. Furious AF. This piece of shit had seen my baby with me at the gas station. He knew an innocent baby girl was in my car. But he wanted to harm me anyway, so, to the rat bastard dressed as a cop and pulling over and hunting vulnerable women on the 15, fuck you cheesy loser. Let's never meet. Fake cop tried to arrest me in a cafe. A little background, because heaven knows we all need it for this story. I'm a pretty big girl, not extremely obese but chunky enough that it's obvious. And it's not due to diet. I have polycystic ovary syndrome, POS, which can cause issues with weight due to the pituitary gland releasing the wrong type of hormones. With this comes insulin resistance, which is like pre-diabetes. It's reversible but not always effective. As such, in my 20s I'm on a drug called metformin. Metformin or glucophage, depending on what name you know it by, isn't an addictive substance. It's used to control high insulin and I have to take it with my heaviest meals, lunch and supper. So I'm usually toting around this giant pill bottle full of white tablets. The reason why I do this is because I work part-time and attend university. I live in the dormitory of my university and have to take transit to work and back, with a bus switch downtown. Around the area where I have to switch my bus are numerous cafes and convenience stores. Needless to say, I've grabbed something to eat from there numerous times. And finally, I tend to dress goth or punk, my head's shaven on the side and I've got a few piercings. Mostly I'm left alone, but there have been times where some wise asses decided to have a go at me. Particularly on Friday nights, so. With all that information, here's the story. It was Friday, the 2nd of November, to put things into perspective. My instructor was ill, so class was cancelled and I had an extra hour to get to work. I usually grab a quick deli sandwich and coffee from a cafe the closest to the bus stop, and stick it into my backpack so I can eat it on my break. This Friday, with extra time on my hands, I decided upon arriving at my stop to stay at the cafe. I go in, order my usual plain latte and turkey bacon wrap if you have to know, and sit down next to the window so I can keep an eye on the stop. I have my earbuds in, and I'm listening to a podcast, just going through the motions. Once finishing my wrap, I unzip the front pocket of my backpack, fish out the bottle of pills, pop it and wash it down with my latte. All at once this guy just comes up to my table, and motions for me to take my earbud out. For a description, he's pretty tall, kind of burly, white as a sheet with this broom mustache, wearing clean civilian clothes. Nothing that set off my alarm bells. Being confused, I do so, and he tells me, "Excuse me miss, but what exactly are those?" He was talking about my pills. A thing with me is that I'm pretty confrontational when I feel threatened, so I said to him, "None of your business." Then this guy pulls open his jacket, flashing me a police badge. Only, he did it quickly so I couldn't make out the details. Just the shape and nothing else. I think it is. What are those? Narcotics. At this point I'm in complete shock. The rational part of my brain is shut off because I'm so caught off guard by this random man, potentially a cop, looming over me. "No," is all I could get out. "That's so," he says, and picks up my pill bottle. Also, if you know medication, you know they put your full name on the damn label, as well as what it is. Before I can tell him to give it back, he puts it in his pocket and quickly goes, "I'm confiscating these, Ms. Lucky." Not my actual name, but, yeah. If you want to come with me downtown to discuss this further, I suggest we do so now, before I have to place you under arrest. Okay. So at this point I'm half calling it bullshit, half unsure what to say or how to react. All I'm able to say is a flat-out, "No," like a moron. "Do you want to be placed under arrest?" "I'm a cop, miss. I can do that." And then he fishes out this pair of handcuffs. They're not the fluffy kink ones either you'd expect a fake cop to have. They're real, and as far as I can tell, metal. "I'd recommend you just follow me to my car so we can have a chat." Of course my sense of rationality is still undermined by the sheer ridiculousness of this situation, so I end up just blurting out, "I'm not using drugs." "Bad ones." "That's medicine," he says, this cliché, "that's what they all say," and proceeds to reach for my arm. When he grabs it, my senses finally come to me and I pull back, up against the window, "Give me back my medication." I yell, loud enough to get attention from the patrons and staff, "Miss, I'm asking you to come quietly." He says along those lines. I keep my mouth running. "That's my fucking medication for diabetes and I need it. It says so on the bottle. If you're a cop, give me back my pills and call for backup." Better yet, I proceeded to grab my phone. "I'll call the cops here because there's been a mistake," that got him pissed off. He says something along the lines of, "You're resisting arrest," and tries to grab my arm again. At this point I'm dialing 911 and one of the baristas is coming out from behind the counter. He asks this guy, "What the hell are you doing?" It finally scares the creep and he takes off. Granted, with my fucking medication in his pocket. I speak to the dispatcher, and the real cops show up within minutes. I speak to the cops and explain what happened, The barista also tells them that this guy had been sitting in the cafe for over an hour before I showed up but hadn't been bothering other customers. Just me apparently. Cops took surveillance from the security cameras, though of course there's none pointing out into the road. I actually had to go to the station to file a report because yup, there were no undercover narc cops in that area that day. So 100% wasn't an actual one. I suspected as much, but in our society, you're inclined to believe and trust in authority figures. These days not so much, but disobeying them isn't in our programming usually. It really isn't in mine either, but the whole thing was fishy from the get-go. Considering, of course, it was my fucking metformin he took and I had to replace the entire 3-month bottle and go several hours between doses, something that puts me at risk for hypoglycemia, low blood sugar. I am of course quite pissed off at this asshole still. But, I'll admit I'm also fully aware and freaked out that I was in a whole lot of danger too. It's not common where I live, but human trafficking is a thing, and the fact that this guy wanted me. A lone female who looks like the type to use some kind of illegal substance, stereotypes suck, to go with him alone gets to me. What if my common sense didn't kick in? Or the barista hadn't done something? The people around us sure as shit didn't pull a what would you do and come to my rescue. Biggest thing is that's freaky is that not only is this guy not caught yet, haven't heard a word from the cops in almost a week, but he has a bottle of my pills out there with my unique first and last name. I hope he doesn't do anything with it. Anybody have any ideas on what to do from here? Update, almost a week later, and guess what turned up? No, not the guy, sadly enough. But my pills have been recovered. The bottle was found a few blocks away. Still half full, by eyeballing it. Well, I can't take my remaining doses though. Apparently, since this guy wanted to abduct me, yes, the cops are legit calling it an attempted abduction, now, he could have tampered with the medication. I know next to nothing aside from what I watched on CSI and LO, but if there's an actual risk of that, they can have them. Not that I could take it anyways. The cops are keeping the bottle for evidence, because fingerprints exist. Anyway, that's the most exciting thing that's happened to me so far regarding this. I've been keeping my eyes out in case fake cop comes wandering onto my campus, and yes, I did switch my bus route. I'm taking the long way. Which I don't enjoy, but until they catch the creep, that's the way it's gotta be. Unfortunately, otherwise I've gotten no creepy phone calls, no random people texting me, no cryptic messages on my social media platforms, nothing. If this guy is smart, he wouldn't even try anyways. I'm really hoping he's smart. For my sanity, I'll update again if they do catch the guy, or if I, by some bizarre unlucky chance, encounter him again. Update, this can finally be put to rest. The fake cop was arrested yesterday after being caught following a woman a few streets away from the cafe. The cops called me when they brought him in. Based on my description, the one I shared with you guys, and him fitting it. They asked if I could come in for a lineup. Sure enough, he was in there. I'm pressing charges for the attempted abduction, and a few other things. I mean, the dude did try to aggressively grab me. The other woman thankfully isn't harmed. That's all I know right now, not his name or motives. It's all I can really say about this anyway because, of course, since I am pressing charges, this could go to trial. If we're all the crime junkies like I am, you know that leaking out information could, in fact, damage the case and whatnot. But I digress. The guy's been caught, his bail is set, I'm in little danger anymore. I can finally start taking my usual bus route to work again.